I'm Cory Lovell, your intern minister here at All Souls Unitarian Church, and I am so happy to welcome you to this episode of CommUUne, a space for spiritual nourishment, purposeful entertainment, and expansion of our sense of community. Being here at All Souls Tulsa for the past 4 months has been an incredible privilege, especially having followed the congregation from afar. But when I arrived here and found out that this Oklahoma city of roughly 400,000 people has not one, not two, but 3 Unitarian Universalist congregations, I was fascinated. And the first Sunday morning I showed up for work, worship was led here by Reverend Gerald Davis, the minister of the Church of the Restoration, the youngest of the 3 congregations located on North Greenwood Avenue. I've been so eager since that morning to learn more about restoration, dive into the story of this multicultural, pluralistic congregation, rich with historic engagement in the community. To be honest, it's one of the reasons we made this show. So tonight, we'll visit restoration, chat with Reverend Davis, and honor some of the contemporary prophets of our Unitarian Universalist tradition that we've lost in the last year and a half. But first, we're so lucky to have a performance by our musical guest tonight, Reverend Gerald's daughter, recipient of the Frederick Douglass Scholars Grant, which afforded her the opportunity to spend a semester abroad at the University of Ghana, where she was immersed in the rhythm, poetry, and tonalities of West African music and culture, the incomparable Olivia Davis.
In the morning when I rise, in the morning when I rise, in the morning when I rise, give me Jesus, give me Jesus, give me Jesus. You can have all the world, but give me Jesus. Twixt the cradle and the grave, twixt the cradle and the grave, twixt the cradle and the grave, give me Jesus, give me Jesus, give me Jesus. You can have all the world, but give me Jesus.
You are certainly welcome here, like everybody who comes in. We especially say that we are a multiracial, multi-ethnic, free-thinking bunch of folk who love boundlessly. An interesting thing happened at GA, at one of our GAs, on an elevator. John Wolfe, who was the pastor, minister of All Souls, was on the elevator with a young seminarian named, at that time, Charles Johnson. Introduced himself and said, I'm from Tulsa, and I'm in seminary at Stark King. And John Wolfe said, the hell you are? How you going to be from Tulsa at a Unitarian seminary and I don't know you? Mm-hmm. And Yabansi, as he is known now, said, well, I am. Yabansi did his internship at All Souls, and he was ordained at All Souls, and people loved him at All Souls, and they began to scour where to plant this congregation. Now, earlier, John had planted a congregation at Hope. Mm-hmm. He had chosen families to go to start this congregation. He wanted to do the same thing at Restoration, choose people to go there. And Yabansi Charles Johnson said no. He said, I want the people who come to this congregation to define what Unitarian Universalism is going to be, not just a replica of All Souls. The congregation then started as a multiracial, multi-ethnic congregation. That's why we say it's always been. Yeah. That has been our belief that we are better together, and especially Tulsa's strained relationship with race. This would be a place to say, yes, we can. This building was the Black Health Department for Tulsa, Oklahoma. In the time of the 40s, there was a polio and tuberculosis outbreak. There was no place to be vaccinated for Black people in Tulsa. And so it was vacant until the Muslims came, and they used it as a masjid, a mosque, and then they left, and a Pentecostal church had it, and then they left, and it was just vacant. Meanwhile, this church started in 1987, and it was a multiracial church, and they were looking around for places to meet. They met at the Greenwood Cultural Center. They met at the Rudisill Library. They even met under a tree. I mean, the congregation was looking around. And then one day, Yabansi tells the story, one day one of the members said, what about that old derelict building over there on Greenwood? And Yabansi said he peeked through the fence and he said, well, that building looks pretty solid. It's brick. The church moved in 1993 after those years of going from here pillar to post. They came in 1993, and it was a wonderful, wonderful place that people said, I can be who I am. I can discover who I am theologically. I can be a part of a group, a community that understands that the community is most important in our congregation. The church called me. I was living with my family in Muskogee, but I commuted up here because I understood a Unitarian Universalist congregation would accept someone like me. Mm-hmm. I grew up as a Baptist in Sapulpa, Oklahoma. I was baptized at 9 years of age, and I had questions, Cory, that the minister just said, believe and God will show you the way. When I went to the University of Tulsa, I was there for 4 years. I didn't attend any church, but I had a great campus minister, Thad Holcomb, who had this campus ministry that the sign said, Unitarians, Disciples, Presbyterians, UCC, Moravians. It was everybody else. Yeah. So it was a place that I said, this is what ministry is about. It's not about going to all of these events at the church. It's about reaching out and but I didn't know really what Unitarian Universalism was about. So I received a religious experience when I was out at Ghost Ranch, working in Albuquerque, New Mexico as part of a college staff. I had a religious experience playing my saxophone in Arroyo.
That'll do it.
I was playing my saxophone all by myself, Cory, playing my saxophone, having a good time.
Wow.
I received this blessing, and I've never had anything like this before. And that's why I know it was real.
Yeah.
And I was crying, and I said, I don't know what is going on with me. Am I losing my mind? What is this? And I say a voice, but it wasn't a voice like Gerald. It was more like a sensation that said, I love you. And then the next sensation was, do my work.
I've had to write the essays for the UUA, for seminary, for all these things about my call. You couldn't hire a screenwriter to write that one.
No. And 4 years later, I had a Master's of Divinity from Pittsburgh Theological Seminary, and a Master's in Social Work from the University of Pittsburgh, because I did a dual track. So but still, I didn't know anything about Unitarianism. Yabansi was a friend of mine. He became a friend. I knew some of the folks who were part of the congregation because, like follows like. And they were Unitarian Universalists. I wasn't, but we understood each other. Yeah. I came in, I did supply preaching for a while, and then they said, the board has met, and we are calling you to be our minister. And I said, what? And I live in Muskogee. They said, no, we want you. They said, in our polity, we can call whoever we want. And we are calling you. I had already been ordained as American Baptist. I've been ordained. You only ordained once. So they said, you're all right. We can install you. We will install you, but you're fine. I did and that was in 1999. Marlon came in 2000. We became friends. And in 2008, I believe, when Carlton Pearson left Tulsa, he had his congregation meeting over at All Souls in the chapel. Mm-hmm. He was about to go to Chicago, and so Marlon said, well, we can incorporate them into into the congregation. Yeah. And so that was a little difficult because people were going like, what, when, what? But he did it, and he came to me. He said, Gerald, I don't have any black people in leadership at All Souls. Would you be a part of our ministry?
That kind of coming together of Carlton's congregation and Marlon's tenure at All Souls gets so much media attention and so much conversation around it for forming this multicultural, multiracial, pluralistic community when Church of the Restoration was founded with that 30 years before.
But yes, isn't it interesting that people forget about us? At one point, I heard someone say, we've already, when All Souls was considering going downtown, building a church downtown, we've already tried a downtown church. It's called Church of the Restoration, and it's failed. And I thought, wait a minute.
It doesn't look like it to me.
We have not failed.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, let's move into where we are right now. So restoration has gone through different iterations. We call this now the House of Restoration. Because within the House of Restoration, there are many rooms. We in the old days, in Baptist traditions, we would say there are many mansions. The Muslims, remember, they owned this at one point, right? Yeah. Then they could not afford it, and they started meeting at the library. I invited them back here. I said, this is your house. Come on in. Yeah. So the Muslims are part of the House of Restoration. We have the Humanist Association of Tulsa, the Humanist Association of Tulsa. It is headquartered here. And we have a humanist service on the first Sunday. We have the Mennonite, Pilgrim Rest Mennonite community. Yeah. They started and they sought us out. And then of course our UU congregation. On the nonprofit wing of the House of Restoration, we have black artists collaborating. Yes. Yabansi moved back to Tulsa as an artist. He says, I'm retired from ministry, but I'm into this art. Artists came to him and said, the black artists, and said, we have works, but we can't show them anywhere because there are no galleries that want to show our works. So he came to me and said, can we have an art show here? And I said, absolutely. The black artists collaborating, they're part of the House of Restoration. Then we have the North Tulsa Historical Society. This is the group that keeps the history of North Tulsa. And then we have the Greenwood Neighborhood Association. And we have the Tulsa Peace Fellowship. And they offer Tai Chi to the neighborhood free of charge. So those are the 8 rooms or mansions in the House of Restoration.
That are just almost like reincarnations of its previous entities over the last 50 years. A center for health and wellness.
Yes.
Thank you. Pluralistic, religious community. It's incredible.
Yes, restoration has always been that kind of place, and it continues to be that kind of place. And people look at us and say, that little place over there gets things done.
In almost every UU church I've ever been in, the congregation has been predominantly older, white, highly educated, liberal to moderate in their social politics, and with a degree of financial means. And in so many of these spaces, a common concern is how to increase the multicultural and multiracial dynamics of their congregational makeup. To put it more bluntly, the churches keep asking themselves why they're not more appealing to people of color, queer peoples, and people from different social, economic, or political locations. And to a certain degree, that's a valid concern, especially in these times of fierce political and cultural polarization. Having a space that purports to be so open, affirming, and safe for populaces often marginalized, you would want your community to actually demonstrably reflect those values. The problem with the way we ask that question, though, is it often implies that we're already providing a type and quality of spiritual nourishment, social engagement, and emotional and intellectual support that serves such a diverse, dynamic populace. And folks just haven't caught on yet. It becomes a question of how do we logistically reach out better as opposed to how do we spiritually look inside ourselves more honestly? If we looked more closely at our past, we would see that we have a long history of communities, congregants, lay leaders, and ministers that are multicultural, multiracial, pluralistic, queer, crossing class boundaries that we often don't celebrate or speak about. Instead, telling the same handful of stories over and over of the predominantly white, wealthy male movers and shakers. And don't get me wrong, Channing, Emerson, Thoreau, Thomas Starking, I find value in their theologies and their contributions. I'm not advocating that we excise them from our canon, but there are plenty of meeting rooms and fellowship halls named after these men. Plenty of ink has been spilled on them. There are other figures in our history that are fascinating and determined and show paths of resilience and resistance that we would be well served in these times to heed. Frances Ellen Watkins Harper, a Renaissance woman, one of the first Black women to be published in the United States, wove together her African Methodist Episcopal and Unitarian religious traditions into stirring poetry and public advocacy for abolition and women's rights. Ramahan Roy, a late 18th and early 19th century Bengali theologian, educator, and political activist, often called the father of modern India. Roy's engagement and interaction with Unitarianism and his blending of it with Vedanta Hindu religious thought had profound implications for both faiths. Or Kenneth and Mamie Clark, the psychologists and civil rights activists whose studies and expert testimony contributed to the U.S. Supreme Court decisions striking down segregation in public schools. More recently, since 2017, our denomination at a national level has taken seriously the call to be more intentional about how we widen our circle of nourishment and concern, how we incorporate diverse theologies, class dynamics, and social priorities into our pluralistic religious communities. Not how we become the religion of the future, but how we live into our values and our multicultural inheritance in the here and now. Sadly, several of the pioneers of that effort, Reverend Dr. Hope Johnson, Elandria Williams, and Kimberly Hampton, all passed within the last year and a half. In the midst of the pandemic, we've been so surrounded by such an immeasurable volume of loss and chaos that it's sometimes hard to focus and acknowledge the profound worth, dignity, and power of each individual life. But in this case, we really must. These three contemporary prophets of our faith need to be honored for their dedication, their vision, their truth, and their invaluable contributions to Unitarian Universalism and their broader communities. Reverend Dr. Hope Johnson was a poetic theologian of Afro-Caribbean descent who had a profound impact on the UU communities in the Northeast. Community Church of New York, First Unitarian Church of Brooklyn, UU Congregation of Central Nassau, and as a chaplain for the diverse Revolutionary Unitarian Universalist Multicultural Ministries Organization, DRUM. Before she was even ordained, as a lay leader back in the late 80s and early 90s, Hope led a movement against the offensive Thomas Jefferson ball that the UUA threw each year, and used the movement to challenge our denomination to live more fully into our faith. Her leadership in that incident led her to become the prophetic minister she was until her passing on November 28th, 2020. Our hearts are with her twin sister Janice and all her family and friends. And then Elandria Williams, an incredible, powerful lay leader who served as a Board of Trustees member and co-moderator of the UUA in these recent transformative years of 2017 to 2020. They were a tenacious and loving community advocate who came up in Unitarian Universalism through the Tennessee Valley UU Church in Knoxville, the congregation that in 2008 endured a terrifying and tragic mass shooting hate crime, which took the lives of 2 congregants and injured many more. E was a cultivator of youth faith engagement and leadership. Their eye always on what the faith can be if we empower young people blessed with energy, vision, and spirit. E was also a founding member of Black Lives of Unitarianism, or BLUE. E was also a founding member of Black Lives of Unitarian Universalism, or BLUE. Elandria died at the age of 41 on September 23rd, 2020. Our hearts are with their twin brother, Frederick, and all of E's family and friends who still feel the crackling energy of their spirit. And Kim Hampton, from St. Louis, was a founding member of BLUE as well. Raised in the Baptist Church, she pursued ministry in both Disciples of Christ and Unitarian Universalist denominations. A proponent of multi-canonism, that in order to truly live into our faith, we must all, as many Black UUs already do, hold within us the canons of many religious and cultural traditions, and they must speak to each other inside of us as much as they do in our pulpits and our classrooms. Kim believed deeply that this faith was not a Sunday morning commitment. It was a day in and day out social, political, economic, educational, mental, emotional, and spiritual commitment to one another's holistic well-being that we made when we covenanted together. 12 years of Kim's theological reflections on everything from the music of Prince to obscure UU history to contemporary humanism and the movement for Black lives were collected on her East of Midnight blog from 2008 to 2020. She was editing a book of biblical interpretation and theological essays from some of the nation's top religious thinkers on the Marvel superhero Black Panther and Afrofuturism when she passed away on July 10th, 2021. Kim's writings have had a profound impact personally on my own ministry, and I know in the years to come, her legacy and impact will only become more and more expansive. So when we ask ourselves, how do we become more spiritually nourishing and socially appealing to a more diverse populace? How do we become more multicultural and multiracial as a faith community? I would suggest we not maintain the status quo and keep trying to be the faith of the future. I suggest we look to the often overlooked and underloved prophets of our own past, to the vibrant and eclectic prophets and prophetic congregations of our own present, and learn from them, be led by them. Then, together, we can walk into an uncertain future, holding each other's hands and each other's canons inside each and every one of us.
I know how important it is for us to allow our grief-filled hearts to invite faith, hope, and love to seep in, drop by precious drop. Allow our hearts to guide us in coming together once again, as often as we must, to claim that we will not let fear dictate the kind of people we are and will be, in spite of the anger, the tears, and the fears. Allow us to be the people who know how to respond, yes, once again, by uniting our actions, our hearts, and our minds in love. Allow us to remember, as we work with the larger world, our congregations, and each other, that we are part of a team doing the work that we have each been called to do. Yours, Hope.
We are the children of freedom fighters, visionaries, and radical liberal theologians. We are the phoenix rising out of the ashes of the McCarthy era and the civil rights, women's, and queer liberation movements. We are the survivors and beneficiaries of youth-led and youth-focused beliefs and programming that encouraged us to be change makers, boundary pushers, and institutionalists at the same time. We are and will be the ministers, religious educators, congregational presidents, organizers, and social change leaders our faith has led us to be. We wear our faith as tattoos on our bodies and in our hearts as testaments to the blood, tears, dreams, and inspirations of our community, ancestors, and elders.
All the work that Black Lives of Unitarian Universalism is doing is about Black people saving their own souls. If, in the process, Unitarian Universalism grows into the religious movement it claims it wants to be, then that's a bonus. Along with that, while you all are in a thankful mood, listen to Black women, pay Black women, let Black women lead. Yes, this is a little self-serving, but it's really not. I've seen Black women in this movement who have been trying to get Unitarian Universalists to understand the stakes of not confronting white supremacy for years. I've seen how they have been treated. It has not been pretty. Maybe now, after the turmoil of the spring, that will change.
Through the dusk of golden sky, summer rains begin to ease my mind and clear the way for you and I, leaving troubles far behind. Days burn quickly towards an empty place. Through the fire I find a state of grace, like a window open wide to a newborn day, an unknown ride. I listen for your heart that sings above the noise life's traffic brings, and days burn quickly towards an empty place. Through this fire I find a state of grace, like a window open wide to a newborn day, an unknown ride. All our dreams are waiting here, wanting faith to reappear, moving towards this empty place. I will find my state of grace.
Thank you so much, Olivia Davis, for those stunning performances. Special thanks to Reverend Gerald Davis and the Church of the Restoration. Thank you to Dorothy Chakotay, Nefertiti Sanders, and Francia Allen for giving voice to the incredible pillars of the faith that we lost this last year. Thank you to Rick Fortner for lifting us up with this incredible music every time. And thanks to our AV team for getting this program out to you. We'll see you for another episode of CommUUne again next week on November 17th, but stick around for Wednesday Community Connections classes and keep warm and safe until we see each other again. Blessed be y'all. Have a good night.